Welcome back to another chilling episode. Today we dive into 3 terrifying true stories of pet sitting gone horribly wrong. Imagine this. You're alone, entrusted with the care of a beloved pet in a stranger's home. The silence is broken only by the creaking of the house and the soft whimpers of the animal in your care. But something isn't right. There's an unsettling feeling, a presence that sends chills down your spine. These are the nights when shadows seem to move and every creak of the floorboard could be a step closer to something sinister. These are the true stories of pet-sitting nightmares. Our first story takes us to a quaint, sleepy town, nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering willows. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, and life moves at a gentle pace. It seems idyllic, but darkness lurks beneath the surface, waiting for the unsuspecting. The town holds secrets, whispered among the willows. Sarah, a college student, was eager to earn extra cash. Pet sitting seemed easy enough, a simple task in a quiet town. Little did she know, she was about to step into a nightmare, the kind of nightmare that lingers long after you wake. The house was old, a Victorian mansion with a somber air. Its windows seemed to watch her as she approached. The moment Sarah stepped inside, she felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The air was thick with an unspoken history. The family was gone, leaving her with their elderly golden retriever Max. His eyes seemed to hold a silent plea. Max was a sweet dog, but he seemed unusually anxious, his tail tucked between his legs, whimpering softly. It was as if he sensed something Sarah couldn't see. The first night passed without incident, but the second night, things took a terrifying turn. The calm was shattered by an unseen force. A cold spot settled in the living room despite the roaring fire in the hearth. It was an unnatural chill that seemed to seep into her bones. The temperature dropped, and Sarah felt an icy breath on the back of her neck. It was as if someone, or something, was right behind her. She turned, heart pounding, but there was nothing there. Just an empty room, filled with shadows and silence. Just an empty hallway, shrouded in shadows. The kind of darkness that seems to move and breathe. Max whimpered again, his eyes fixed on the same empty space. His fear was palpable, a mirror of Sarah's growing dread. Sarah tried to shake off the unease. She told herself it was just her imagination, but deep down, she knew better. That's when she heard it. The distinct sound of footsteps coming from upstairs. Each step echoed through the silent house. Heavy, deliberate footsteps like someone was pacing the floorboards above her. The sound was unmistakable, but the family was away. There shouldn't be anyone else in the house. The realization sent a chill down her spine. She crept towards the stairs, each step filled with dread. Her heart pounded louder with every creak of the floorboards. The footsteps grew louder, closer. It was as if the presence was aware of her approach. Reaching the top of the stairs, she saw it, the faint outline of a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was barely visible yet unmistakable. A tall, shadowy figure with long, dark hair. It stood motionless as if waiting for her. Sarah froze, her breath caught in her throat. Fear paralyzed her, rooting her to the spot. The figure turned, and for a fleeting moment their eyes met. Those eyes were empty, devoid of life. Empty, hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through her soul. They held a darkness that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. Terror lent speed to her feet. She turned and fled, driven by pure instinct. She raced back down the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. Each step felt like an eternity. Max was barking now, a deep guttural sound that echoed through the empty house. His barks were frantic, filled with fear. Sarah didn't wait to see more. She knew she had to get out, and fast. She grabbed her things, scooped up Max, and fled into the night. The cold air outside was a welcome relief. She never returned to that house, forever haunted by the memory of the ghostly figure and the feeling of icy dread that clung to her like a shroud. The experience left an indelible mark on her soul. Our next story takes us to a bustling city, where the constant noise and motion mask a deep sense of isolation that many feel but rarely express. Mark, a struggling musician, jumped at the chance to pet sit in a luxurious high-rise apartment, hoping for a brief respite from his daily struggles. It seemed like an easy gig, a chance to escape his cramped studio apartment and the constant pressure of making ends meet. He was tasked with looking after Luna, a sleek black cat with piercing green eyes that seemed to see right through him. The apartment was modern and minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city lights. But something felt off. an unsettling vibe that he couldn't quite place. The first night, Mark noticed strange occurrences that made him question his sanity. Objects moved slightly, as if nudged by an invisible hand, and a book fell off the shelf by itself. He dismissed it as his imagination, the stress of his upcoming audition playing tricks on his mind, convincing himself it was nothing. But the second night, the unease intensified, making it impossible to ignore. He woke to the sound of whispering, soft murmurs coming from the living room where Luna slept, sending chills down his spine. He crept closer, his heart pounding in his chest, each step filled with dread. The whispering stopped abruptly as he reached the doorway, plunging the room into an eerie silence. Luna was staring at the corner of the room, her back arched, hissing at something only she could see, her eyes wide with fear. Mark strained his ears, but there was nothing but an eerie silence, a void that seemed to swallow all sound. He tried to convince himself it was just the wind, the city sounds filtering through the ventilation, but his gut told him otherwise. But deep down, a primal fear began to gnaw at him. He was not alone, and the feeling was growing stronger. Later that night, as he tried to sleep, he felt it again. The distinct feeling of being watched, an oppressive presence in the room. He opened his eyes slowly, and that's when he saw it. A shadowy figure standing in the doorway. A figure standing in the doorway, shrouded in shadows, its presence menacing and cold. He couldn't make out any features, just the outline of a tall, slender form, its movements almost ethereal. Mark lay frozen in fear, his mind racing, as the figure glided closer, its movements fluid and silent like a ghost. He wanted to scream, to run, but terror had him paralyzed, his body refusing to obey. The figure leaned down and Mark could sense its gaze upon him, cold and menacing, as if it was studying him. Just as suddenly as it appeared, the figure vanished, melting back into the shadows. Mark didn't hesitate for a second. He grabbed his things, ignoring Luna's frantic hisses, and fled the apartment, his heart racing. He ran down the seemingly endless corridors, the feeling of being pursued clinging to him like a curse, every shadow a potential threat. He never looked back, forever haunted by the memory of the shadowy figure and the chilling realization that in the heart of a bustling city, he was utterly alone with something sinister, something that defied explanation. Our final story takes us to a secluded countryside estate, where secrets lie buried beneath manicured lawns and behind the facade of normalcy. This estate, with its sprawling grounds and picturesque views, hides more than just a beautiful landscape. Emily, a veterinary student, was excited to pet sit a beautiful Persian cat named Duchess. The cat's luxurious fur and regal demeanor made her an instant favorite. The pay was generous, and the estate seemed peaceful and serene. It was the perfect getaway from her hectic city life, but as Emily soon discovered, appearances can be deceiving. The tranquility of the estate masked an underlying tension. The owner, a reclusive old woman, was strangely distant, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and fear. Her demeanor was unsettling, adding to the eerie atmosphere. She gave Emily specific instructions about Duchess's care, emphasizing the importance of keeping the cat indoors at all times. The insistence on this rule seemed excessive. Emily found the instructions odd but didn't question them. She was determined to do a good job and earn the generous pay. The first day passed without incident. The estate was calm and Emily enjoyed the peaceful surroundings. Duchess was aloof but well-behaved. She seemed content to stay indoors, lounging in various spots around the house. But as night fell, a strange tension settled over the house. The once serene environment now felt oppressive. Emily began to hear strange noises, soft scratching sounds coming from the attic. The sounds were faint but persistent. She investigated, her curiosity getting the better of her. The noises seemed to beckon her, drawing her towards the attic. As she approached the attic door, the scratching grew louder, more insistent. It was as if something was desperately trying to get out. She reached for the doorknob, but it was locked. The barrier only heightened her curiosity and concern. She could hear Duchess hissing and spitting from behind the door, her fur standing on end. The cat's reaction was alarming. Emily decided to leave it alone, but the sounds from the attic continued, keeping her awake long into the night. The mystery gnawed at her. The next day, she found a small antique key hidden beneath a vase. It was an unexpected discovery that piqued her interest. It looked like it might fit the attic door. The possibility of uncovering the attic's secrets was too tempting to resist. Driven by a morbid curiosity, Emily decided to see what secrets the attic held. She felt a mix of excitement and dread as she approached the door. As she unlocked the door, a musty smell wafted out along with a wave of cold air. The atmosphere was chilling, The attic was dark and dusty, filled with cobwebs and covered in old sheets. It was a stark contrast to the rest of the house. She flicked on the light switch, but the bulb was burnt out. The darkness added to the sense of foreboding. Using her phone as a flashlight, Emily cautiously made her way inside. Each step was taken with care, her senses on high alert. That's when she saw it, a large wooden chest tucked away in the corner. It seemed out of place in the cluttered attic. She approached it slowly, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The chest seemed to hold the answers to the mystery. As she reached out to open the chest, she heard a blood-curdling scream. The sound was so sudden and terrifying that it froze her in place. It was Duchess, her piercing cries echoing through the house. The cat's distress was palpable. Emily spun around, her blood turning to ice. The scream had shattered the silence, leaving her in a state of shock. Standing in the doorway was the old woman, her eyes wide with terror. Her presence added to the surreal horror of the moment, but it was what she held in her hand that sent chills down Emily's spine. The sight was both shocking and terrifying. It was a bloody, ceremonial dagger, and it was pointed directly at her. The weapon gleamed menacingly in the dim light. Emily realized then that she had stumbled upon a dark secret, one that the old woman had been desperately trying to protect. The gravity of the situation hit her hard. She had stumbled into a nightmare, and her life was hanging by a thread. The realization was both terrifying and surreal, leaving her paralyzed with fear. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these spine-chilling stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more terrifying tales. Stay safe out there. Remember, the next time you're home alone, or find yourself pet-sitting in a stranger's house, be aware of your surroundings. You never know what lurks in the shadows or what secrets hide behind closed doors. Sleep tight, and don't let the bed bugs bite, or anything else for that matter.